First time that he's actually drawn human blood.
The killing spree continues in his next labor, when Hercules slays the Amazons, a ferocious tribe of female warriors, after stealing the belt of their leader, Hippolyta. With that, Hercules has completed 9 of his 12 labors. His bravery, strength, and stamina have carried him through the most impossible series of tasks ever attempted. But the final battles will prove to be the hardest. They will take Hercules beyond the outer limits of the known world, through territory no Greek has ever seen, in search of a realm with intriguing parallels to the biblical Garden of Eden. The mythical hero Hercules has endured 9 daunting labors in a quest to atone for the crime of killing his family. Every challenge represents a tougher test of his strength, stamina, and resolve.
In his labors, there's kind of a crescendo of difficulty. That Hercules is able to overcome even harder and harder labors shows him to be incredibly powerful in a way that no other ancient hero is able to do.
But as the challenges go on, it becomes clear that no amount of physical pain can ease his mental anguish. Hercules is a prisoner of his own guilt.
No matter how many labors he performed, no matter how much heroism he exhibited, no matter how extraordinary his physical strength were, inside of him there was no peace, there was no satisfaction.
3 more tests remain for Hercules. They will take him to the edge of the earth and into an abyss of death.
And what happens is that Hercules continually has to go further and further afield from Greece. The further you go out into the unknown, you actually cross the plane between mortal world and immortal world.
In his 10th labor, Hercules sets out to capture the cattle of the Geryon, a vicious monster with 3 sets of legs, 3 heads, and a lethal pedigree.
He's actually the grandson of Medusa, so he too is a kind of semi-monstrous figure. And he's not going to let these cattle go without a fight.
But destroying the Geryon is only half of the challenge. The other half is getting there. To reach the Geryon, Hercules must venture beyond the Mediterranean Sea, into the Atlantic Ocean. But one massive obstacle stands in his way. A mountain range that joins Europe and Africa into one continent and seals off the sea from the ocean. Hercules decides not to go around the mountain. He goes through it. He splits the mountain in 2 with 1 blow from his sword. This part of the myth was created to explain how the Atlantic and Mediterranean were joined. The cliffs on each side are forever linked to Hercules.
The Straits of Gibraltar are known to the ancient Greeks as the Pillars of Hercules, and no one could go beyond there. No one knew what was beyond there.
To the people of the ancient world, the Pillars of Hercules were not just a gateway into an unexplored ocean. They were a portal between reality and myth.
For a Greek to talk about somewhere beyond the Pillars of Hercules is kind of like you and I talking about somewhere over the rainbow. And that Hercules has actually gone there and come back would have only added to his reputation.
All ancient sailors bound for the Atlantic had to sail between the Pillars of Hercules. And one recent discovery suggests there were many who dropped anchor here to pay respects to the hero himself. In a cave on the Rock of Gibraltar, archaeologists have turned up hundreds of artifacts, believed to be linked to Hercules.
So we took samples and sent them away for radiocarbon dating, and they're all perfect matches within each other, and they all seem to point to a period of about 400 years, from about 800 BC to about 400 BC. These are objects that were being placed very specifically for a particular reason, and we're quite confident that what we have here is a big shrine.
Experts believe Greek sailors came to the shrine to pray for their lives as they prepared to follow Hercules into the unknown. They did not know what, if anything, lay beyond the pillars. In the myth, Hercules faces the same uncertainty as he crosses this threshold into the unknown. Beyond the pillars, the three-headed Geryon and his cattle await. The monster comes out fighting, hurling huge boulders down the mountain at Hercules. But Hercules has a secret weapon. Arrows dipped in the poisonous venom of an earlier conquest, the Hydra. He takes aim and fires. The Geryon falls dead. And Hercules claims his cattle. 10 labors down. Next, Hercules must go to the edge of the world to steal golden apples from a garden guarded by a dragon with 100 heads. Apples, a garden, and a dangerous serpent. This labor parallels the biblical story of Adam and Eve.
There are early Christians who made a comparison between the apple of the Hesperides and the tree of life in the garden. That's one of those things dealing with ancient material, is that these folks talked to each other, and they knew each other's stories.
In the Hercules story, there's a deadly twist. The apples he seeks belong to his enemy, the goddess Hera.
Not only do these apples belong to Hera, but they are signs of her sacred marriage to Zeus. Apples and marriage are very commonly combined in Greek mythology.
Hercules wanders for years in search of Hera's apples, with no luck. Finally, he reaches the end of the world and meets a god with a heavy burden to bear. Atlas.
Atlas was one of the Titans, and his job is that he needs to carry on his shoulders the weight of the world. Literally, he bears the world on his shoulders.
This modern-day phrase, to carry the world on your shoulders, is derived directly from the myth of Atlas. Hercules is exhausted and lost, but Atlas knows where the golden apples are. So Hercules volunteers to hold the world while he retrieves them. Atlas eventually returns with the apples, but there's a catch. He tells Hercules that he doesn't want to take the earth and sky back.
Atlas, of course, says, "Thanks very much, I've been trying to get rid of that for a long time," and is about to walk away. Hercules says, "Oh, you know, you're right, I'm really sorry. Do you mind it? Could you just take it back for just a second? I'm going to pad my shoulders with my lion skin." Atlas takes the world back, and Hercules walks away.
Hercules has avenged Hera by stealing her precious apples. Now he is one challenge away from winning his freedom, and it will send him to a place no mortal has returned from alive. The land of the dead. Hades. Hercules has confronted 11 of the toughest challenges ever attempted by man or the gods. He's fought wild beasts, evil kings, hideous monsters, and crossed over to an unknown world in a relentless quest to make amends for killing his family.
Hercules spends his life toiling, trying to get rid of a guilt that he doesn't really feel like he has earned, always suffering, always enduring.
Now, one last test remains. For his 12th and final labor, Hercules must find his way to the mysterious underworld of the dead, Hades. There, he must capture Cerberus, the three-headed guard dog at the gates.
Hercules' final labor is by far the most outrageous. Humans had never done anything like this before. Heroes couldn't typically go to the underworld.
Hades, master of death, is the keeper of all human souls. And Cerberus is his enforcer.
Now, the dog isn't so much to keep you, the living, from going in, because if you're crazy enough to do that, that's your problem. It's to keep the dead from coming out. One of the biggest problems you have in most ancient civilizations is the fear that if someone dies, they may not realize they're dead and come back to you.
Hercules tries a diplomatic approach with Hades. He asks for permission to take his guard dog up to Earth. Hades agrees on one condition. Hercules must overpower the beast with nothing but his fists. This is the final moment of truth. Hercules wrestles the dog to the ground. And beats it into submission.
The fact that he was able to bring Cerberus back from hell is an extraordinary event, because what it was showing was that a Greek hero could go in and break the cycle of life and death.
At last, Hercules has completed his penance. He has conquered every obstacle that has been put in his path and endured physical and mental torment beyond measure. By all rights, he should finally be at peace.
Hercules is someone who struggles, who overcomes. He suffers, but he always gets back up. And there's some vague promise that life is going to be better for him after this adventure is completed. But of course it never is.
Hera holds an undying grudge against Hercules for being Zeus's illegitimate son. There is only one escape from her curse: death. He builds a huge funeral pyre. His life on Earth ends just as he endured it, in torment.
He wants to have a heroic death, the proper death of a hero. He wants to burn on a funeral pyre. Well, when this happens, it seems to be the final cleansing. What burns away is not Hercules. What burns away is his mortal flesh. And this releases his soul, so that he himself ascends to the heavens.
In death, Hercules is finally redeemed. Zeus, the king of gods, believes his son has suffered enough. He invites him to join the immortals on Mount Olympus. And his nemesis, Hera, finally relents.
What we see here, I think, is that Hercules is the hero of heroes. He's the greatest of the great. And at the very end of it all, Zeus says, okay, Hercules, you've suffered enough, and you're so great, I'm actually going to go ahead and just make you a god. Hercules is finally going to get a kind of reward that will last forever. The suffering's finally over.
In the end, Hercules is resurrected and joins his father in the eternal kingdom. It is an ending with an eerie similarity to another divine mortal, Jesus Christ.
Hercules' final act is one of self-sacrifice. And again, there's an interesting Christian parallel with the hero who has to suffer to obtain immortality. And when he lights himself on fire, it burns away all the mortality, and all that's left is his essence, and that's what ascends into heaven.
This is the myth of Hercules, a timeless story of strength, suffering, and redemption.
It's the kind of story people like to hear.
Because everyone has experienced trouble and toil and suffering in their lives. They've all faced monumental tasks that they don't think they'll be able to complete.